Clearwater Revival's water monitoring program. As you can see in this graph, we've been monitoring since way back in January of '99, actually. And since that time, we've had 127 different people monitor water quality in our watershed. That's a lot of people who've had a turn at this. Some of them have stayed a long time. Some of them have monitored twice and quit, but it's a pretty impressive data record. You can see that right here where all of a sudden things change and we have all these red bars. This is where we started monitoring bacteria as well as chemistry. Chemistry's in green. And all of our monitors currently do both tests. And the reason that things changed right here is that the Mobile Bay National Estuary Program started footing the bill for the chemicals and for the bacteria supplies, which was a wonderful opportunity for us to add this into our data. Currently, we've got almost 6,000 records. When I did this, there were only 5,000, and a lot of those are bacteria records. So what we want to do is look at the questions that we asked when we first revived our program here in 2015. Of the people that are monitoring, these are the folks that are monitoring right now, and if any of them are watching, we want to have a big thank you to them. The ones in blue have been monitoring for more than 6 years. And the ones in red, 2 to 5 years, and the ones in green have been less than 2 years. And the people with underlines under their name have actually submitted over 300 records. That's a pretty impressive thing for an organization to have. The questions that we asked when we first started this monitoring revamping was, the big one was, is it safe to swim? And all of our monitors that are doing bacteria now are using a method called an R card. It's a funny little piece of cardboard here with a little plastic lid on it. Makes me think of one of those magic slates that we used to have as kids. You take a pipette and you add 1 milliliter of sample water here, and then you close the little plastic flap down. And inside that card is food for bacteria and some chemicals that will help those bacteria to grow and to stain a certain color. We're looking for E. coli as an indicator of fecal contamination, not because it's the worst bacteria, but because it's one that if we find it, we know that there is fecal material in that water. E. coli is present in the intestines of all warm-blooded animals, including us. So that's a good thing. It's not something that is so bad, it's that it's a good indicator. They do those cards, they do 3 of them in a triplicate, and then they take them home and put them in an incubator because bacteria like warm temperatures in order to grow. And after they've been incubated for 24 hours, the monitor will take that card out and count the colonies. You can see a card that looks like this, and the blue dots are E. coli colonies. The red dots are just other coliforms that live in the environment. In order to report this, we actually take the average of the count for the 3 cards, multiply it by 100, and we get a unit called colony forming units per 100 milliliters. And that's what all of the regulations are based upon. Alabama Water Watch uses standards that were basically derived from the EPA and ADEM guidelines. And when we look at those colony forming units per 100 milliliters, if there are more than 600, we consider that to be unsafe for human contact. If there's between 200 and 600, we consider that to be cautionary. And if there are less than 200, we consider that to be safe. So is it safe to swim? We've got almost 2,000 bacteria records over time, submitted since June of 2016. And of those, 64% of them are good. That's perfectly safe. 20% of them are cautionary, and 16% are in the unsafe zone. This is sort of a statistical thing, and I wanted to break it down to give you an idea that all of our sites are not the same. This is our overall average. So here we have a map of all of our sites that have at least 5 years of data. And these charts all show the site, like here's one. That's only about 1/3 of the time it's safe to swim here, and 1/3 of the time it's cautionary, and almost 1/3 of the time it's not safe to swim in that particular location. Here's some other ones. It's only 50% of the time that it's safe to swim. I want you to notice that the sites that are farther from the mouth of the river down here, these outlying sites that are in smaller tributaries, are traditionally worse than the sites that are associated with the main part of Dog River. Okay? That's because for our sewage system, the pipes, the main trunk line pipes, follow the streams. So if there is any kind of an overflow, it's going to overflow into these smaller tributaries. By the time we get down here, we're not having that same setup anymore. I want to focus on this area right here because this is what I want to talk about as far as where it's safe to swim. These sites, these 5 sites right here, are the best sites in the whole watershed as far as water quality goes. So if you want to say, is it safe to swim? The safest place for you to swim is in this area of Dog River, from up about where Venetia Road is, Dongbone Island in that area, all the way down here past the Alba Club. This probably goes a little farther, but we don't have a site here. By the time you get to the mouth of the river, it's not as safe anymore. So as long as you're in this area, and this is a site on Oswell Creek right around the bend, you don't want to go any farther than that. You'll notice that this is already a higher caution area than these 4 right here that are on the main part of the river. Okay. I want to look at these 2 sites. They're right across the river from each other. And this is a plot that shows their actual bacteria counts since 2016. This is Eric Holliday and Karen May's sites. One of them monitors one time, and then about 2 weeks later, the other one monitors. So this is a really strong record. You'll notice that most of the time, those dots are down here in this green zone, and it's perfectly safe. 16% or 16 times it was here in the cautionary zone. That was only 8%. And up here in the unsafe zone, there are only 12 events out of all of their 200 samples that were not safe. If I look at each one of these samples and I compare them to the monitor's notes and the rainfall data for that period of time, what we see is of those 12 unsafe samples in 10 years, every one of them, except for 2, this one and this one, are associated with heavy rainfall of an inch or more, either the day of the sampling, a day before, or 2 days before. So is it safe to swim? If you avoid swimming after a rain, you are 99% safe if you were swimming in that part of the river, that part that's wide from Dongbone Island down past the Alma Club. As you go up the tributaries, it gets riskier, but still those high levels are always associated with high rainfall events. So that's our take-home point for testing bacteria. As long as you stay out of the water after heavy rain, give it a couple of days, those bacteria die because they are used to living in warm gut temperatures, not in the water temperatures that we usually have. So are there any questions about our bacteria monitoring? You guys have your mics muted, so I cannot hear you.
Well, I would say, is there anything that we can do on a personal level to help minimize bacteria?
Oh, that's a huge question there. As long as your house has a good connection to the street for your sewer line, if you were living in an old house in Mobile, I would say you might consider having those old clay pipes replaced with PVC that's sealed. If you're on a septic tank, and there are still plenty of houses in our watershed that are on septic tanks, please be sure that you clean that out on a regular basis. Those things don't last forever. And you should also check your field to be sure that your field is not overflowing or trickling out into some kind of little channel. Particularly for people who live near the river, that's a problem. Because if those systems start to actually leak into the river or into the water table right beside the river, that can contribute bacteria to the river itself. But those are the main things. And then, for goodness sake, support Mobile Area Water and Sewer. Everybody wants to blame them, but it's a huge, thankless job. And we have a lot of aging infrastructure that has to be taken care of. It's a difficult job, and I think they do a fine job of it. So when you see something that's bad, say something. You see a manhole leaking, for goodness sake, call it in. Those are the only things I can think of, Morgan.
And Mimi, you may have mentioned this, but summertime generally is higher bacteria level in the river.
Usually it is.
Unfortunate, because that's when we want to swim, but
Usually it is, Marbury, but that's primarily because the water is a little bit warmer and the bacteria can live a little bit longer. We have some high counts in the winter, but you would have to have an immediate spill because the water is so cold that if a bacteria gets in it, he dies right away. Whereas in the summer, they can live long enough to end up being something that you actually detect. And particularly in the tributary streams like the ditches and things like that, if there's any kind of a spill in that water's almost warm enough to have those bacteria live for a long time. So yes, it's always going to be worse in the summer. Not that there are more spills, but that if there is something that happens, it lasts longer.
linger, right?
Yeah.